Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Sandy. And today we're going to be talking about chapter 2 of Atomic Habits by James Clear. There's some reflection on that. There we go. And this one talks about how your habits shape your identity and vice versa. But before we get started on that, then I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. So go ahead and jump out and chat.
Am I unmuted? Okay. I couldn't tell on my screen for a second. Okay, hi, Dan Sissick here. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and looking forward to getting on and discussing the book some more.
I think Sandy may be just listening in today, but Sandy's down in Miami, Florida. Sometimes she has an opportunity to add to the conversation, and other times she's just listening in, which is awesome. So, for those of you who are watching, if you want to join us listening in on the conversation, or maybe just typing messages to us in the background, we can always share that. And we love having different people on to share their different ideas of what we're talking about. That's how we all learn and grow and expand our minds, and that's what we're all here for. So. Okay, so chapter 2 of Atomic Habits talks about our identity and how our identity is the key factor that keeps the habits that we have and continues to, motivate us with new habits when we create them, or keeps us from continuing with a new habit if we want to make a change. So let me just kind of read a little bit here. I mean, it's talking about says through few things can have a more powerful impact on your life than improving your daily habits, and yet it is likely that this year you'll be doing the same thing rather than doing something better. It says changing our habits is challenging for two reasons. Number one, we try to change the wrong thing. And number two, we try to change our habits in the wrong way. And in this chapter, he's going to be talking about why we change the wrong thing. And he's talking about our identity. So with that, I know Dan, you don't have the book yet, do you? I don't know if Sandy's got it or not, but let me just kind of go through here. She talks about the three layers of behavior change. One is outcomes, which is what we generally will focus on as we say we want to reach a particular goal, or lose some weight, or reach a financial success, or whatever it is that we're trying to change as far as our habits go. Maybe we just want to be more healthy, or I don't know. There's a million different things that we all try and do to make better habits, whether we're trying to change a health problem, or we're trying to change a financial problem or a relationship problem, or whatever it is. And here he's talking about how the first layer, he says, first layer is changing your outcomes. This level is concerned with changing your results. Losing weight, publishing a book, winning a championship. Most of the goals you set are associated with this level of change. And then the second layer is changing your process. This level is concerned with changing your habits and systems, implementing a new outcome at the gym, decluttering your desk for a better workflow, developing a meditation practice. Most of the habits you build are associated with this level. The third and deepest layer is changing your identity. This is concerned with changing your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself and others. Most of the beliefs, assumptions, and biases you hold are associated with this level. He goes on to say, outcomes are about what you get, processes are about what you do, and identity is about what you believe. And he reminds us, he says that, many people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. But the alternative is to build identity-based habits. And with this approach, we start by focusing on who we wish to become. And one of the biggest things that this chapter kind of, helped remind me of, and I kind of started thinking about the different habits that I've been working on, um, is just that when we think that we are something, then we do stuff that reinforces that belief. And I think that's what he's really trying to get across. So if, for instance, we are trying to lose weight, but we don't feel like we're really a healthy person, then we don't tend to stay with those different things that we try and change. Or if we say, so here's a good example. This one's not health related, but it's like money related. So if we want to save money, but yet we see ourselves as, as somebody who splurges on things, or we like to spend money, or we're more of a shopper, or we're a bargain hunter, or we're this or that or whatever, is that we tend to be more focused on the things that create that versus creating better spending habits. So if you see yourself as a spender, then you're going to spend. If you see yourself as a saver, then you're more likely to save. What do you think so far, Dan? I can't hear you.
I forgot I had to unmute.
There you go.
I agree because I tend to be a little bit of both. I can splurge at times when I really want to, and if I really have the desire, and that's kind of when I'll get to the point where I might say, screw it. It's only money. It's not that big of a deal, and do it. And other times I'm like, okay, I'm pinching every penny. Like, do I really need this? Do I really want that? Or do I really, is that something, the times I tend to splurge is on other people and other family and friends and stuff. I'll kind of like, whatever. They're important to me. It's worth it. And I'll deal with the consequences later. And that's not always the best thing. And those are habits I want to be able to do, but not always have to come back around and later on say, "Oh crap! Now I've got to figure out how I'm going to take care of that and get that data and that all those things." You know. So with that being said, I think that's where I'm at. With that idea and that thought process, and just knowing that I can do better and be better in those areas, and maybe learning some of the triggers and stuff that help with that, or my habits or things I do when I'm in that mode might help me better manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here he has this kind of like little chart thing. I'll just kind of show it up here real quick, where he's talking about, I don't know if that's clear enough to read, but it shows the one thing, it says outcome based habits versus identity based habits. So like outcome based habits are like you're focused on this outer thing, and you're hoping to make a change, and so you just start doing whatever you think you're supposed to do. Hold on, I dropped my pencil. And then the other one is talking about, focusing on like your identity. So you focus on fixing or changing something that's on the inside, and that naturally flows out and progressively helps you actually achieve the outcome that you ultimately had wanted in the first place. And he gives a number of different examples in here. Let's see if I can like find one. Oh, well, let's kind of talk about this though first. I've got a couple things before he starts talking about specific examples. He reminds us that behind every system of action are a system of beliefs. And he says behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. And by the self, he's talking about how you see yourself, your identity of yourself, your, philosophy, if you will. um so like as an example, in terms of like as a person's philosophy, like if you see yourself as a person who has integrity, you'll find it really difficult to lie, right? And if you see yourself more as a person who kind of bends the truth or stretches the truth, and you think it's like no big deal, then lying would be like no big deal, right? I know that's not necessarily a habit per se, but it was just something that popped into my head. Anyway, so he says behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. You may want more money, but if your identity is someone who consumes rather than creates, then you'll continue to be pulled towards spending rather than earning. You may want better health, but if you continue to prioritize comfort over accomplishment, you'll be drawn to relaxing rather than training. It's hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. You have a new goal and a new plan, but you haven't changed who you are. When he's talking about this, like the relaxing versus training, exercise, that kind of thing, that really kind of struck me because, um, over the years, I've like tried to do exactly that, tried to pick up an exercise program and, maybe it's not like anything major. It's just, oh, I'm going to start doing yoga in the morning or I want to start, riding a bicycle or going for a walk or whatever it is. And, I get motivated and I start doing it. And then, some time goes by and then all of a sudden I'm just back and I'm like, I just really want to spend my morning sitting in my chair, looking out the window at the sun and, drinking my coffee. And, and I realized I'm like, well, that's, I guess that's kind of what I'm sitting there doing is I'm more of a, seeing myself more as somebody who is enjoying the moment, if you will, in the morning, and I was just enjoying that peacefulness, and that's a big thing with me. And and of course, the last time I talked about the fact that I started riding I got a new exercise bicycle, and so I was kind of looking at my beliefs, going, okay, or my thoughts about myself. It's like, who am I when it comes to this whole, riding a bicycle? And so I started looking back into my past. I'm like, I used to be a cyclist. I mean, I would bicycle everywhere. That was just the thing. I think, Dan, you talked about that at one point too, is when we were kids, we rode all over the place. And so I was like, how can I change kind of my attitude of, obviously I still want to have my peaceful morning where, I'm enjoying my morning coffee in the sunshine, but at the same time, I also want to continue with this bicycling habit. And so I was like, well, okay, I can say that I'm an athletic person who also, appreciates the finer things in life or whatever, So I started thinking along that lines. And so far, I'm still on my daily um, exercising. And let me see, I started it back in let's see, I know we were talking last week about, how many days does it take to really create a habit? And of course, reading this chapter, I'm realizing it doesn't have anything to do with how many days. It's more of, who you see yourself as. And let me look on here really quick because I've been kind of tracking to see, how many days that I've been doing this. So I started on March 29th, and we are, let's see, so oops, one, two, and so 3 weeks in. So I'm doing pretty good. I missed one day yesterday, but that was because the kids spent the night and I had to get up really early and I don't want to wake up the babies. So I just foregoed. I know that's not the proper grammar, but I really don't care. Anyway, so far, what do you think, Dan? Sandy, anytime you want to jump out, just do so if you have that ability to do so at the moment.
Um, I think I agree. I know, like when we've done the book, The Slight Edge, and things like that, he talks about doing little steps and processes. But I think what's nice about this book is he talks to us and tells us to look at, excuse me, what's behind that, and the actions and the motives and the things behind it, and why it's so hard to get our mindset to even get to that change and get to where we can keep up that change, and where we let outside influences kind of sabotage us rather than staying with it until we get the habit established and down and set, set in stone. Whereas other habits just naturally seem to have it and they just flow into our lives and we don't think anything about it. Next thing we know, like the daily routine of life of getting up, going to work, doing this, doing that, those things, seem easier to do. And I don't know if it's because of how our minds, like in my mind, I know I have to get up, I have to go to work. And so I'm like, I accept that and go forward with it. Whereas some other things, it's like I know I want to do it, I desire to do it, but in my mind and my body, and there's that yin and yang thing where the mind wants to, but the body and or the spirit is willing, but the mind, that age long fight. And it's how do we master that? How do we control that to where we can move forward the way we want?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the aspect of going to work. And because some people can't even get themselves to go to work. And so if you think about what motivates us to go to work, say, I mean, because not all the time do we enjoy our jobs, right? We go there because we think we just have to go. But what really motivates us to go is, in my opinion, for me, it's more of, I've committed to doing it. And so because I see myself as a, oh, you're still unmuted, Dan. There you go. Because I see myself as a reliable person who you can count on, right? There's my identity. Um, then that I'm going to show up for work, right? I'm a person who is going to work hard. I'm hard worker when I go to work. I really was kind of thinking about these things this whole week after reading this chapter, trying to identify the real things that were motivating me to do the stuff that I do consistently. And work is a good example of that. And I think that a lot of people can probably relate to it because, I mean, anybody can call into work and say, I'm not coming in, but why don't you do that? It's an identity thing. You don't want, because it's like that, your personal reputation, if you will. There's your identity right there. That's the thing that you are going to try and identify is what is the real motivator behind you continuing to go to work or continuing to I don't know, show up in something that with a smile on your face even though you don't want to be there, or um I don't know. I think there's a lot of things like even simple stuff like what motivates you to shop at one place or another, or whether you go to one grocery store versus another grocery store. I mean, you can see there's a big difference in the target audience that they have for those places. It's like you get a Whole Foods or Fresh Time or something like that. They're very much looking for that person who identifies with being a more health conscious, environmentally conscious kind of shopper versus somebody who is more of I just want to save money and get stuff that I need kind of thing. And but we kind of can really see how those actions that we do mindlessly are actually driven by our attitudes about who we are related to those actions. um, make sense? Really?
Yeah, it's funny because, like you said, I have certain stores I like to go shop at, namely
Hmm.
the local grocery store that's right close. Now, some of it, some of the items I buy are for ease, and because a lot of times, even though in my head, and this is, I'll give a great example. My fight right now is I'd like to eat better and start cooking more at home and preparing more meals. But because I work full 8 hours, and a lot of times I do Uber part time and do that afterwards, by the time I get home, it's 7 ish or so, and I'm looking at the clock going, I really want to be able to just chill and relax. I don't want to take the time to fix and cook like a meal
Mhm.
because it's usually just for me anyway. And so I go with the easy route, something quick, or whatever, or a sandwich or this or that, or something semi-prepared already that all I have to do takes 5 or 10 minutes and I'm done and I'm ready to eat. But I am in my head going, no, I want to be, because I know if I were to, it would help with me getting
Mhm.
healthier, probably boost my energy more, because I'm not eating, I hate to say it, processed food stuff that's kind of semi-ready and already ready to go, and which they say is not the greatest thing for you. More natural eating or cooking or using actual like pork chops or hamburger and making real meals and stuff like that are better. Plus, I enjoy cooking and I like it, but when it's just for me, I just I like doing it for other people. So that's, a perfect example right there. What in my mind is keeping me from being able to really move forward in that? And it's more, I come home and I fall into that, oh, I just don't want to do it, type of thing, rather than getting up and force myself to do it like I do on a weekly basis now. I try to come home on every Tuesday. I try to do some of my cleaning around my house on a regular basis. So I just don't come in, and I usually don't turn the TV on. I usually don't do anything else. And I usually don't sit down. I've learned that if I sit
Mhm.
down, I kind of like get in that mode and it's like, oh, I'm comfy. Oh, this is nice. But if I stay and just jump into what I'm doing, like cleaning the dishes or vacuuming or kitchen floor or doing a little dusting or whatever, then I get in that mode and I can get some things done that I want to get done. Then I sit down. So, I'm making that adjustment. So why can't I make the other adjustment? So it's interesting how that plays out, how to get your mind to do what you want to do, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, and it was just really interesting kind of watching myself go through this week after reading this book and just not all day long was I sitting here just examining what I was doing, but off and on it would come across my mind to be like doing something and then I would be like, all right, what's the real motivator behind this? And so for instance, Dan, like with the when you're talking about cooking healthier food and ease and quickness and limited time and all of those kind of things, it's like it's real similar for us too. Because like this week, um, we were trucking, and then I also had my part-time job that I was trying to go to, and and then I got to try and squeeze food in someplace, and and the biggest thing is like when it comes to eating healthier, the only way that I felt like I had any control of that was that if I pre-prepared it, if I prepped it, the day before, and then it was already ready, and then I didn't have to think about it. But what motivated me to do that was because I had decided that, I'm just, I'm eating healthier. That's what I'm going to do. And, but then at the same time, I'm like, okay, so I say that, but what's really driving me on the identity side of that is that maybe I don't know. That's a good question. So now I'm back to it again. Now I got to think about it more. Um, I know in what you were kind of saying when you were like hurrying and or not hurrying, and I know the part about not sitting down. That's a big part of it because that's something too. But it's like if I can narrow down what the actual motivating factor is that I can reinforce that. Because then here it talks about um, when our identity is what is driving us, then our behaviors they want to be in integrity with our beliefs about ourselves. And so if we see ourselves as like, I am more concerned about having time, being going to bed early or whatever. I need to get that 8 hours of sleep. I'm the 8 hour sleep kind of person or whatever, And if the only way I'm going to be able to be an 8 hour sleep kind of person, then that means that I've got to cut the time elsewhere. I've got to cut out activities in different places to make that happen, right? I don't know. Interesting. Let me go forward in the book, unless you want to add something else, Dan.
Well, I'll jump out now because, like you were saying, you're sitting there and just looking at yourself. And I think I'm like you. I was thinking back to when you were talking earlier about, the type of person I am in work. It's weird. I will sit here and really fight with myself when
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about calling in. And even when I'm sick, I will fight with myself. It's like, no, I'm paid to be there. And especially now, if I'm not there, I don't get paid because I don't have sick time or anything like that. I don't make any of that up. So if I'm out, I'm out. So I really sit there and fight with myself. It's like plus I don't like calling in. It's like because then I put other people in, having to do more than what their normal stuff is and things like that. and I don't like that. And it's something that kind of I don't cringe, but it makes me just kind of like, because then it goes back to, like you said, the integrity thing. What do they think about me? How are they thinking? Oh, he's just calling out because he doesn't want to be here, and it's like, no, I'm not. I don't call off to just call off very often. Once in blue moon, I admit I have done it because, like anybody else, there are days you wake up and you just like, I just and I've done it, but it's been few and far between. Most time when I call up, I'm like sick, and even then, I still usually go in because I'll doctor up and take everything and whatever I need to try and so that's weird because it's weird how I act that way. But then on other areas, I let things stop me from doing what I want to do. So it's that paradox and that the weirdness of how our mind works and understanding that about ourselves. I think that's the hardest thing to get because we self-examine, but we don't like to self-examine in the areas that we feel like we really should. Because I'm very super critical about me when I would do something wrong, something where it comes from somebody else. But for me myself to correct things here for where I want to get is like I don't like doing that, and I'm being honest on that part. So it's interesting. Like I said, got to really think about some of those things.
Yeah, for sure. And and when you were talking just then, I mean, you were sounding like, I mean, you were like a really committed person to being that person who never calls in, right? Or not. I don't ever call in. That was like, I mean, that's part of your identity as far as when it comes to your job, right? And because of that, I mean, the whole world can be falling apart, and you're sitting here feeling like, oh my God, I can't call in because I don't call in. I'm not a call in person, right? I mean, and I've experienced that too. And and so that's really interesting if we realize that's our driving factor right there, is that our identity of ourselves is saying we are not that person, and so therefore we are not going to allow ourselves to produce behaviors that cause us to be something other than that thing. And so then in the book he talks about other things though that we do to ourselves exactly the same way, and that's what causes us to have different kind of behaviors. So he has these kind of let's see here. So he's talking about, he just kind of like randomly puts off these statements, and he says, well, he says, once you've adopted an identity, it can be easy to let your allegiance to it impact your ability to change. Many people walk through life in a cognitive slumber, blindly following the norms attached to their identity. And here's kind of a list. He says, here's one right here that people believe: I'm terrible with directions, right? And so when a person believes they're terrible with directions, do they do anything to try and fix that? No, they just keep stating, I'm terrible with directions, rather than like trying to do it. Or I'm not a morning person. That's a good one. You hear that all the time with folks. And I'm not a morning person. And so what do? If they have a day off and they don't have to get up for some reason, they just don't, they just sleep and sleep and sleep, And I'm bad at remembering people's names. I find myself saying that sometimes in my own head. And I'm like, no, that's not true. I have to remind myself, no, that's not true. And, Catherine mentions Byron Katie a lot, who she's like the guru that talks about the 3 questions of whether or not stuff is true. Because when you question those beliefs that are popping up in your head, then you can actually make changes to those things. And she talks about questioning those beliefs. And so when we're talking about, I'm bad at remembering people's names, when that thing pops up into my head, then I have to be like, no, nope, that's not true. And then I'm like, this is how, you remember people's names better, and I go through kind of a process and think it through. And then I'm like, I'm not really that person. So then I'm kind of identifying with not being the person who doesn't remember people's names, right? Um, Another one says, I'm always late. How many people do we know that are always late? And then they kind of, that's kind of their identity, and or just show up late. I'm not good with technology. I have somebody in my family who constantly, every time that I have a conversation with that person, they're saying something similar to that, and so therefore they don't know how to do anything, because every time they get frustrated with some little tiny thing, they just say, I'm bad with technology, and don't even try, And it's like, when I learned how to do everything that I know how to do online, I didn't know it beforehand, but I just kept trying and trying and trying and trying, because I'm like, my identity is that I'm not going to give up just because one little thing gets in my way, right? So um let's see. He says, when you have repeated a story to yourself for years, it is easy to slide into these mental grooves and accept them as fact. In time, you begin to resist certain actions because that's not who I am. So if we identify with these things that, we say we want to change, but we aren't changing our original thing that is causing us the behavior in the first place, then we're not going to be able to. He says there's internal pressure to maintain your self image and behave in a way that is consistent with what you believe. You find whatever way you can to avoid contradicting yourself, because we don't want to contradict ourselves, right? And it says the more deeply a thought or action is tied to your identity, the more difficult it is to change. Good habits can make rational sense, but if they conflict with your identity, you fail to put them into action. And and so that's like the biggest thing with this chapter. Of course, he goes on to talk about how to start changing your habits, so that, or changing your identity, so that you can actually change your habits. And the biggest thing is to start by, uh, first of all, identifying the identity based statements you're saying to yourself that are causing you to do the things you don't want to do anymore. And so for instance, with the exercising, for me, um I it's like, I have been, when I get up in the morning, because I've been getting up early to do my exercise bike, and sometimes I have the thought coming up, and I'm like, I really need sleep, like I need this extra sleep, or I need to relax, or I've been running around, and I just, I'm exhausted, and I need to, do something to, I just need something to relax. And so these thoughts will come up, and and then I'm kind of like thinking about, okay, so where's that thought, really coming from? And I feel like it's coming from kind of like the identity of myself, that I'm kind of like a laid back, kind of a enjoy the little, enjoy time to myself kind of person. And so then when I'm like, oh, well, I don't know if I really want to exercise, I really just want to get this pleasure of whatever it is, sleeping in extra for myself. That's like that identity thing, I guess. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, no, because I'm trying to change what I really believe about myself. I'm not like a laying around kind of person. I'm more of an active, gotta be busy, kind of got to be doing something all the time person. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can drag the cycling in on that, and talk about just being more of an athletic, or a cyclist, or I used to be a cyclist. Why aren't I a cyclist now? I'm just going to be it again. So I've been talking about that, so, to myself.
Yeah, I get that because I played sports, growing up as a kid and into my younger years, kind of pretty regularly and stuff. And as I got older and kind of life has its progressive issues that come with when you get older, you know, I admit I don't have the energy. Partly probably because of how I eat and the things I do, and some things, haven't played tennis in quite a while. I haven't gone out and hit a tennis ball, and um, I even like going and just finding where backboard where I can hit against the backboard and just doing that. I enjoy doing that because I'm physically actively getting, and the endorphins kick in, and I feel better. So if maybe part of the thought process is thinking, okay, I enjoy tennis. I enjoy going and just doing that, and even if I'm practicing my swings on the court and where I'm placing the ball and stuff, and remembering those things about it and why I love playing tennis because it is an active sport, but it's something I actually enjoy doing, and looking at it that way instead of, oh, I have to get up, I have to go, I have to do this and stuff, you know. because that's kind of the mindset. It's like I'm busy. I have this. I want that. I want to relax. I want to. I let so many other things kind of cloud and get in the way. But maybe, like you said, if I just reframe it and go back to that identity I had when I was younger, that I actually enjoy this. I love it's my favorite sport. Why not enjoy something that is something I thoroughly enjoy and make time for it? That's the other thing is, um, but I've been so focused on trying to maintain a certain level of income so I can keep bills paid and stuff. Some things have gone by the wayside too, and necessarily so, but there are times where I can squeak it in or work it in and and things like that. And I think that's part of, changing the mindset and even doing stuff around my house. If I stay active and busy doing things around my house, that will help put my house in the way I want it to, or better, to where I feel better about certain things, you know, mainly my bedroom. Yeah, you know, the rest of the house is not too bad, but those, I think it is the reframing and how we frame it here and how we follow through on that and changing it so it goes back to our identity. And so we're not, um, oh, I can't remember how you said it, but, you know, not being true to who we are. And I think that's the other part of it is over time we become kind of true to these other things when in actuality we don't want that truth. We want to go back to this other truth or change the truth back to what our more core essence is.
Yeah, he talks about in here, he says, well, he didn't say this. I kind of like summarized this. He says that it basically boils down to beliefs create habits. And so, the thing that you believe about yourself is the thing that causes you to have the habits. And then your habits create results, right? So, we know by reading like The Slight Edge and what you say when you talk to yourself is that, we have these habits that you create, they produce these results. And then the results, though, they reinforce your belief about yourself. So if you are, say, not, you think you're, I don't know, lazy or something, or you're a relaxed, laid back kind of person or whatever, and then you do these relaxed, laid back kind of things, then the results are that you get relaxed, laid back kind of results. So then that reinforces the fact, see, I'm relaxed and laid back, right? And and so then he's talking about, so if you want to change something, he says, whatever your identity is right now, you only believe it because you have proof of it. And he says, if you go to church every Sunday for 20 years, you have evidence that you are religious. So, if you study biology for 1 hour every night, you have evidence that you're a studious. If you go to the gym, even when it's snowing, you have evidence that you are committed to fitness. The more evidence you have for a belief, the more strongly you will believe it. And he says, let's see. Uh, Right. Okay. So before he wrote this book, or actually, he had a blog before that, and before that, he was saying that he uh, he never really saw himself as a writer. He wasn't a writer; he was just the guy, right? And he says, but then says, I began my writing career by publishing a new article every Monday and Thursday for the first few years. As the evidence grew, so did his identity with a writer. He says, I didn't start out as a writer; I became one through my habits. He says, of course, your habits are not the only actions that influence your identity, but by virtue of their frequency, they usually are the most important ones. He says, as you repeat these actions, however, the evidence accumulates and your self image begins to change. The effect of one off experiences tends to fade away, while the effect of good habits reinforce with time, which means your habits contribute most of the evidence that shapes your identity. In this way, the process of building habits is actually the process of becoming yourself or your new self. And so, like, I didn't used to drink coffee, right? Years and years ago, I was not a coffee drinker. And, it wasn't until probably my mid 20s that I started drinking coffee. And, and I don't know what it was that caused me to start drinking. There was just, I don't know, something or other happened. And, oh, I remember what it was. Sorry. I actually had some good coffee. That's what it was. It was good coffee. And then I was like, "Oh, this is really great. I love this coffee. Now I have to find good coffee." And so then from then forward, it was about me finding this good coffee because I'm a coffee drinker. I'm like, I love good coffee. And so every time I would find good coffee and I would enjoy it, and if I'd have bad coffee, I'd be like, ugh, I can't drink this crap. So I'd go and I'd find good coffee because I'm like, I like good coffee. I'm a good coffee liker. And so now I'm like a coffee addict, and that's just like this identity that I have created over time that now I'm all about the coffee, right? And whereas it was funny because not too long ago I was in the break room and there was some folks in there and they were just talking about their days and what they do on their off time and where they go to drink and hang out and blah blah blah, and they were like, what's your favorite drink, and what's your favorite drink, they're asking each other and they're all talking about alcoholic beverages. And she turned around and she asked me, she's like, "What's your favorite drink?" And I'm like, "Coffee, no doubt." So it was just funny. I mean, it's just little things like that. And I think we all have those, these just things that we identify with. And it's like my husband used to be a big Mountain Dew drinker. And I mean, all of the Mountain Dew commercials are trying to like get you to be like this ex ex athlete or super guy or whatever it is, and that's why I think that's why so many advertisements they're like plugging away at the person that you are trying to be or that you think you are, or it was like with cigarettes, the Marlboro Man, right? That's who you're trying to identify with. You want to be that cool cowboy, right? um and when you see yourself that way, then that's what you do, right? So,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
going to jump out really quick. I am in the past. I've talked about being a Mountain Dew-aholic and stuff like that. Actually, over the last since I last got sick, it was weird. When I was sick this last go around, for some odd reason, I had no desire to drink any Mountain Dew. And I haven't really had a lot of it lately. I've got from when I've dog sat and stuff because my people that I dog sit for know that I like it, so they usually will get some for me while I'm there. But I have one in my stuff, and I'm like thinking, and when I go dog sit this week, they're gonna have some for me again. So, but it's kind of interesting how I have identified as my drink being Mountain Dew, and I've been drinking it since it first was introduced in the '80s, and I've been drinking it all this time and it was more of just habit. I would wake up, but there are times I'd wake up craving it, and other times, but partly because I think of the caffeine and all that. But it's so funny how that became part of, and people know me that way. And if I didn't have a Mountain Dew in my hand, they would look at me and say, "What's wrong? What on the wagon again, or something, or to that effect. Give me a hard time." But it's funny how, once again, goes back to that identity. But I just want to I noted in the little chat section that when I checked over out on our channel, somebody actually said hi. I do not know if they're still there, but I'd like to actually shout out and say hi and thank them for joining us at least there. It's Italo Alves, and so I don't know if they're still there, still on, but hopefully they're still there and still watching and listening, getting some good information. And if they want to jump out or say something, please do. And please continue to come back and join us. So just wanted to throw that out there too, because I don't want to ignore them. And when I realized that somebody was actually there and said hi, so um, want to give that out there too.
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for noticing. I just jumped over there and said hi too. So hey, glad to have you on. Um, so with this whole like changing our identity, so I think that one of the things is just recognizing it, right? So I recognize that I call myself a coffee person. I'm like, I like gourmet coffee. It's whole bean. I don't drink crap, and and that's something that I identify with, and so then when I can look at different other habits that I have, and I think that we can all do that, in all different areas of our life, particularly with food. I mean, depending on the kind of food, it's like when I go to the store, I only buy certain brands of, uh, it's like coffee. There's one right there. And then maybe other things like a certain types of cheese or certain types of, brands of vegetable. We talk about organic versus non-organic. Maybe you identify with those kind of things. So if you can identify your identity relating to that kind of stuff, we ought to be able to do it for other things that build other habits, whether it's trying to be more healthy or trying to, um, like eating in general. I have a lot of friends that are friends of my husband who, they're all big eaters. They love having big, like seafood boils and you know, steak cookouts, and they just love food. And of course I love food too, and there's certain things that I had done. I'm a big barbecue eater. That's just something that, I just love barbecue. But I could change that. I'm a big vegetable eater too, but I know there's a lot of people that just are not big on vegetables. So you can kind of see yourself as that. I eat vegetables, and so therefore when I go to the store I buy vegetables, and then when I get home there's vegetables, so I eat them, right? It's like there's evidence that this is true, and so therefore it becomes more and more and more true. So let me go back through here. Oh, okay. So he talks about, okay, so he says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So no single instance will transform your beliefs, but as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity. Small habits can make a meaningful difference by providing evidence of a new identity. And so when he kind of refers back to his writer thing. He's like, every time you write something, then that's evidence of being a writer. Every time you practice the violin, then you see yourself as a musician. And every time you start a workout, you're an athlete. Every time you encourage your employers, you're a leader. And so when you're making these decisions to do this, it's a vote towards agreeing that, this new identity that you've decided that you want to establish is true, right? And when you don't do those things, then you're voting against that identity. Make sense? So he talks about, if you want to make a big change, first you decide the type of person that you want to be. So for instance, with me and the cycling, I've decided that I'm a cyclist, and I have to, I have to vote for that every day that I am a cyclist. And so my vote for doing that is because I get on the bike and I'm a cyclist, right? And the more that we do that, then the more evidence that shows up in our lives, and then it becomes more true for us. So first decide who you want to be, and then, choose the actions that are going to be the vote for that, and then do the actions. And then by virtue of doing the actions, then you become that person that you want to be. And if you're not sure, say that, he was talking about, say you want to be more active, or you want to, eat healthier. Is then he started thinking, he's like, well, think about this. Okay, who is the type of person who would be that? It's like whatever goal it is that you have is like, who is the type of person who would be that goal? Say you want to run more, or you want to, um, well, maybe you want to get a promotion in your job or whatever. Who is the person that you would need to be in order to get that promotion? And then start coming up with ideas of things that you can do that would make you that person, and then do those things. Let's see. What else? I know we're close to the top of the hour, so it's kind of trying to wrap up this chapter a little bit, make sure that we got everything in here. Oh, this was a good thing that he said in here. He says, identity change is the North Star of habit changes. So it's like your guiding light, if you will. So it's like changing who you think you are is the thing that's going to help you change the habits that are going to create who you think you are. What do you think, Dan? Any final habits before we wrap up for today? Or habits? Any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Well, I mean, but thoughts do become habits after time. If we're doing the same thing and stuff, so that Yeah, it's interesting because there are lots of things I want to become and want to be. And as we were talking, I've been looking around in my space and areas and things like, okay, I want to get better at this. I want to get, and I'm trying to think, how do I go about putting the right processes in my mind to where it will become something I want to do rather than something I don't want to do. See, that's the other battle is, because there are some things we want to be and become, but is it, how do I say this? Is it worth it for us to become those things when it comes down to it? Is it important enough or valuable enough, or are we just saying it because it makes us feel better? Do you follow what I'm saying? And I think sometimes we get caught up in those types of things too, where we kind of lie to ourselves and say, "Oh, well, I want to get better. I want to do this. I want to do that," and say, "I'm going to do that." But then when it comes down to it, do we take the steps and do we really follow through and get back to that core identity that we want, or have we become so comfortable with the identity that we have established over time and that feels comfortable to us that we don't really want to make those changes even though we say it. And I think that's the other battle too that most people aren't willing to admit and say. Um, and I think that's a valid thing that everybody has to look at and that we have to look at within ourselves in order to start making those steps in the right direction. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you think the same way, but that for me is something that just came out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, a lot of times we get down on ourselves because we think we should be different than what we are, and and what I've kind of over the years when we've discussed different books and we've talked about, um, you know, just who I don't know, living life in the moment and being the best version of ourselves. And I mean, there's all these different things we talked about over the years, but when we truly want to see something different in our lives, if we can identify the cause that is behind it, the thing that we identify with that is creating the behaviors that we feel like we have to stay in alignment with, then we can actually make some changes. And yet, at the same time, if we are comfortable in the identity that we have and we think that we're only supposed to make these changes because someone else thinks we should, then it's not going to matter because we aren't going to believe that anyway. And I want to suggest that if you're happy with how you are, then quit beating yourself up for being happy with who you are. you know, I don't want to be that way either, right? Um, but if you aren't happy with something in your life, I mean, you just have to figure out, okay, you know, this one area of my life, and I want to get this other result, then who is the type of person who does the actions that are required to get this type of result? And then start telling yourself you're that type of person, and then find little things that you can do on a daily basis to vote for that new identity. And then just keep think of it that way. I'm making a vote that I am a cyclist, and so therefore I'm going to ride my bicycle, and that's my vote for me being a cyclist, right? Or I've decided that I'm more of a leader and I'm, shooting for a supervisor position in my company. And so I'm going to do these little things that I'm voting for me as a leader and doing those little things. Like I'm reading leadership books or I'm, you know, talking to people in a leadership way. I don't know. There's just different things along that lines. Or I'm a healthy eater. I'm an athlete. I'm a, whatever it is that you feel like you need to call yourself or say, uh, identify with. If you see another person in the world who is what you want to be, then think to yourself, what do they think about themselves? Obviously they aren't seeing themselves as a lazy person if they're running 15 miles a day, right? They're seeing themselves as a runner, and that's, I want to be a runner, so I'm going to go and run, and then therefore I'm a runner. But if I do it every day, then I can be more of a runner, right? So I don't know, Sandy. I wish you could jump out and share your thoughts with us. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this conversation. I know that you're busy doing other things. And we're glad to have you. So Maybe next week. Oh, hey, that actually reminds me. Next week, I'm participating in a walk for breast cancer awareness. So I don't think we're going to be able to get together next week unless, well, I mean, Dan, you could jump on here with Catherine or whoever else wants to join. I don't know, we can talk about it later. But either way, we may not be participating next week, or we might be. I don't know. We'll see. So, all right, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. Oh, did you want to add something else? Sorry.
I was going to say, stay tuned to what we decide we want to be, whether we want to.
I know, right? Well, that's what it's all about, right? We don't know yet.
A little play
We'll
on the,
decide
what
later.
we've been talking
Yeah.
about.
Awesome. Awesome, Dan. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. And if you'd like to participate with us, jump over to our Facebook group, and you can find it by clicking on the link below this video. There's a link. It'll just say mindsetmasterycollective.com, and that's just a quick link to get you to our Facebook group, and you can jump in there. Tell us you want to participate with us, add your thoughts, disagree with us. I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. We can have a great conversation, and we can all learn more. So have a great day and an awesome week, and we'll see you. Oh, and a happy Easter weekend 2019, right? That's it. Bye for now.